Good afternoon. Who's having a good climate week NYC?
Yay!
I thought that was.
I don't think they heard.
I thought that was rubbish. Who's having a good climate week NYC? So you've now made it through to the last session of the Hub Live, communicating climate change. Now, I was just saying backstage, when I joined in 2018, this is the first event that I created, and because it's a personal passion of mine that, we know being here that the climate world can sometimes be a different planet to the planet that everyone else is sort of living on. And I think what's really important is that we look at ways we can communicate with different people. And that is what this event is about. We're looking at communications, but not in a sort of corporate head of comms communications role. We're looking at it in terms of the different ways we communicate as people with each other. And so I'm super delighted to be joined by two panels with people who are communicating with the public in very, very different ways. And so I'm going to introduce them to you now. To my right, I have Zay Harding. He is an actor and TV presenter and is just launching the second season.
Woohoo!
The Visioneers on CBS. So we're going to be talking to him. Then to my right, I have Jay English Cook. Now, you might have heard about the Climate Film Festival, which is taking place this week. English is the co-founder and artistic director. So probably has all the tickets in your back pocket if people want to check something out there. We have Adam Gardner here, who is the front man of Gusta, but also is a co-founder and co-executive director of Reverb. And if you haven't heard of Reverb, we're going to find out what that is today. And finally, if you're feeling thirsty or a little bit hungry, we have the top restaurateur here, Henry Rich. I think we're going to an event tomorrow afternoon, so I'm looking forward to that. Henry Rich is the managing partner of the Oberon Group, and we think that food is part of culture in New York City as well. So we're going to be talking about that. So let's jump into it. Zay, you're right next to me, so you're going to get the first question.
Hello.
So congratulations on your new show of The Visioneers. I mean, it'd be great just to we've got an international audience here, so not everyone might know about the show. So it'd be great to hear a little bit about that, but also the model you've gone through to create this show and what you're trying to do is very different and interesting, and I'm loving it, which is why you're here. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the show and also, how you're using it as a platform to engage with new audiences.
Okay. Yeah, we have an incredible show. It's called The Visioneers, and it's on CBS every Saturday. We just got a second season, which we're really excited about. It's coming up in 2 weeks, October 4th. And actually, we just found some great news. Adam is going to be joining us with his Reverb program. So the whole idea is that we're trying to spotlight anybody who's doing anything innovative that's trying to make the world a better place. And we've just been really successful, especially in the younger generation. It is on Saturday mornings. It fits under an entertainment and educational, informational programming. So that's basically your Saturday morning safe TV to watch. Parents usually let their kids watch that and can trust that they're going to get entertained without getting tarnished with any weird ideas. But what's happening is because we have so many kids on our show who are doing innovations, the kids are really starting to get inspired and making their parents watch, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from everybody. But yeah, that's the concept of it, and anything that's cutting edge or just thinking outside the box, we're really able to draw sort of a headquarters for everybody so that somebody who sees the show, thinks they're doing it on their own, can realize there's actually help. And we've actually connected quite a few people too. So innovations are actually advancing quite quickly because of that. But all kinds of stuff from electric boats to new forms of seawalls to capturing carbon from creating man-made shells using the same process that shells use, like hermit crabs use to draw carbons out of the ocean, can trap them in these and create sand. We've had glass being pulverized to sand to create extra resources for people in the bayou around Louisiana. They're losing all their protection, and so now they're planting cypress in there so that they're creating a stronger ground. So all kinds of stuff like that, and it's really exciting because everybody's dealing with this issue. And that's why things like this, the Climate Week put together by the Climate Group are so important, because just by putting it in front of each other, we're able to have discussions that lead to conversations that lead to solutions. And I want to thank Thais Lopez for putting together the Volo Foundation. Sorry, it's just Volo Foundation. And they are a platform that raises awareness of climate issues. So they seek out stuff to just make people aware of it. It's a nonprofit that just really, really wants to do good. And now they're focused on solutions. And so we've become partners for the show, and we're really finding some great solutions.
We live in a sort of social media world now. Half of these apps people use, I couldn't even recognize the name, but I'm a big traditionalist. I think there's a real place for TV and traditional media as well. And I think, this is, you might have heard this, but this is the largest Climate Week NYC that's ever taken place, of over 1,000 events. One of the things that's so important about this is that the vast majority of events are free and open to all, because we want to get more people in to work on this. And I think TV has a role to play, because you can get enveloped in a world which maybe through your own social circumstances you couldn't do in real life. And it's a gateway. Look, tell me a bit more about specifically television, the role it can play in changing people's lives, quite frankly.
TV is a huge influence on people, and it's a very mainstream. We have household names because of shows, and to bring this into the spotlight is a dream come true. I've been pitching this idea for a while, and finally Hearst decided to pick it up in their Saturday morning block. And because of that, it is in people's homes, and people are starting to think about it. But the timing was everything. Because the situation is getting so bad, people really are feeling we need to do something, and not just me, we all need to do something. It's the world's problem. And so by the TV route, getting behind it with CBS, this is fantastic. So we can really make a presence. And we're doing it in a way that it's not preachy. We don't want anyone to feel bad, and we certainly don't want to focus on the gloom, because that's only if we don't act upon it. We're showing what you can do and act upon it and watch all the good things that have come of it. So, yeah, I mean, that's really the benefit of bringing it onto the mainstream. And also the social media stuff are following, which is great too.
And of course, don't even mean about new media. This is, of course, being recorded as an episode of the 50 Shades of Green podcast. And we, of course, obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, we love you. I'm going to go from the small screen to the slightly bigger screen now. So English, co-founder, artistic director of the Climate Film Festival. It's been 25 years since the film Erin Brockovich came out, which was the film you showed on your opening night on Friday. 19 years since An Inconvenient Truth. Can you probably make some people in this audience feel a little bit old? In what ways do you think film has successfully contributed to public understanding and engagement with climate change? And how effective has it been at actually influencing policy, making change, making the world a different place?
Thank you so much, Adam. That is an excellent question, and really the reason behind the Climate Film Festival and its origin story. We're still a relatively new organization, about 3 years old, just are in the process of hosting our second annual Climate Film Festival. And I have to say, everything that Zay was just saying resonates deeply with what we're all about in terms of platforming and prioritizing incredible filmmakers, TV, folks who are in the industry, artists working in media and the arts, who are thinking about solutions and trying to move the needle, focusing less on some of the doom and gloom messaging, although that can be important, also to recognize folks who have experienced the effects of climate change. So we say that we take a wide angle lens on climate media, focusing on episodics, on film, on short form, and everything in between. And I'm so sorry, Adam, I've forgotten exactly your question.
Nice...
Erin Brockovich, 25 years and the impact. Thank you so much. So that is exactly actually a film that we felt was so important to highlight as our opening night film this year, 25 years anniversary. We were fortunate to have a wonderful panel, including Angela Barranco from the Climate Group. Big shout out to y'all for all the incredible work you do, as well as Michael Schamberg, a producer on the film. And he was saying in kind of going back into his own archives, thinking about the legacy of this film, how important it is to highlight stories that end in success, that have actors and protagonists who you can empathize with. Julia Roberts, excellent choice for that particular movie. Everybody loves her. The comedy still lands as well. It was so fun to see it on the big screen. But stories that do have successful results are so critical to highlight. So thank you, Zay, for the important work that you're doing. And I, for one, am very excited to catch season 2 coming up. We also, it was so interesting, had a director as well on that panel, the director of another film documentary called Black Snow that we screened on Saturday night, Alina Simone. And she recently worked on this film that is dedicated and focuses on a female protagonist from a small town in Siberia who experiences environmental injustice in her own backyard and decides to become a citizen journalist, picks up her own phone and starts filming. And chaos unravels and ensues. Alina, the director on the panel, it was so fascinating, was talking about how critical Erin Brockovich was to her. Erin herself, the real life Erin, actually was an EP on that particular film. And Alina, the director, talked about how that alone gave her access to communities in Siberia because they too had heard of Erin Brockovich. Just the ripple effect, the power of media to ricochet beyond one screening to 2 screenings to many, many more, especially nowadays in our age of new media and podcast, etc. And just the name Erin Brockovich, this director was able to say and go into these communities to say, I am making a movie about the Erin Brockovich of your own backyard. And that is what gave her access. And that to me really highlights the power of storytelling and cinema in particular, the big screen, to open up doors to create new pathways and build bridges.
And I think, massive kudos to you for what you've done with the Climate Film Festival. I was at an event recently, the International Centre of Photography are doing an exhibition with Ed Batinsky, who's photographs wonderful thing. Well, I say wonderful thing. He shows the impacts of climate change. One of the things he was saying is we can all look at photos on our phone. When you're in a gallery, being around a lot of people who are looking at the same thing, you feel something. And I've recently got into the habit of actually going to the cinema on my own, and it just feels different when you're even complete strangers. So I think the strength of what you're doing is absolutely incredible. And I'm going to come back to both of you in a second, but I want to go to Adam now, a fellow Adam. You're also used to having an audience as a frontman yourself, but I'd like to hear a bit more about the work that you do at Reverb as well. So I'll let you do a bit of an intro into that, and then I'll give my follow-up question.
Right on. Thanks. So I started with my wife, Reverb, 21 years ago in 2004. So we actually did feel a big change when Inconvenient Truth came out as far as how we engage audiences at concerts. The idea of what Reverb does is we work at the intersection of music and the environment. We partner mostly with musicians, high-profile touring musicians, to do basically 3 things. One, systemically change the music industry to make it more sustainable, using the fact that the entire industry is built around musicians, and musicians that care can actually push the needle. And we've done that with many musicians, starting a long time ago with Jack Johnson and continuing to do that, more currently doing that with Billie Eilish right now on her world tour. So that's one, systemically changing the way the music industry works and making it more sustainable, because it isn't. 2 is using that incredible cultural power and reach of musicians and that incredible connection that they have with their fans to engage millions of fans to take action right there on the spot at concerts and in general. So they're communicating from the stage, at the shows, online through their connections that they have with their fans, and in media. 3, we use this incredible platform to boost the environmental movement in general. So we're bringing out local and national nonprofit groups at every concert stop in an action village at the concert. That's a part of the tour. It's part of the concert experience. When you're a fan, the first thing you hit is a volunteer in their favorite band's shirt saying, hey, have you checked out the Eco Village? You can fill up a free water bottle over here. You can plug into local nonprofit groups that are doing good work right in your hometown. And so we do that. We've done that at over 7,000 concerts. And we've had over 8 million fan actions taken just at concerts. We've eliminated 4 million single-use water bottles through our Rock and Refill program with Nalgene just at concerts. That's not counting the fact that they bring these reusables home and then continue to use them. So there's been some real impacts, real actions. As far as connecting fans to causes in their campaigns, we incentivize them. Hey, you can win side stage viewing at Jack Johnson if you do X, Y, Z. You fill out this passport and go to each booth in our Action Village and take action, and you'll be entered to win the signed guitar or some incredible thing that fans want, but also do it because they feel like they're part of the community. We've also been able to use that as a fundraising platform, where now as a big part of boosting the environmental movement is we're actually awarding grants to local, national, and international environmental groups, as well as climate projects around the world that draw down greenhouse gas. We've raised over $22 million to date and granted those out to various environmental causes and climate projects.
So what got you into this?
My wife. So I've been in a band for 34 years, and at that point, she's been in the environmental space for equally as long. She has environmental master's in environmental education, worked for the Rainforest Action Network. When we lived here in New York, she worked for fighting for green space here in the city. And I came home from tour, I think one too many times, complaining about what a mess it was. Anyone who's been to a concert, the lights come up at the end of the night, and what are you walking through? It's a sea of plastic on the ground. As far as from the musician's standpoint, tour buses the generators always buzzing. You go to a festival and it's all generator power, and it's a mess. So it was really my wife that was like, well, then do something about it. At the time, we were playing with Dave Matthews Band and Jack Johnson, Maroon 5, who are all partners of ours and have been ever since. So that first tour was with Alanis Morissette and Bare Naked Ladies in 2004, and it worked. We're like, okay, let's keep going. And so it's been over 300 plus tours now, and again, 7,000 concerts and festivals as well. We are addressing power at festivals. That's a new thing that we're doing as part of our music decarbonization project that we started in 2023. Again, with that systemic change, the default power in a festival where it's remote, it's in the middle of a field somewhere, is diesel generators, and those are just dirty power. So we've displaced those and shown that battery power is ready for the main stage. And so the first big stage that we did in 2023 was at Lollapalooza with Billie Eilish. Her headline set was solar powered. We set up temporary solar farm in Grant Park, much to the chagrin of the community and the fire department. But they did it, and we battery powered her set. Lollapalooza since then has been battery powering their main stage last year and again this year with our help, but they're doing it. And we've done that for over 300 major festival headline sets now that started in 2023.
One of the things I always like in this job is you get to realize that, the general public sometimes think that sustainability is a compromise. It's a sort of nasty thing you have to do to be a good person. And actually, in so many of the things that we do, which we enjoy and love, it can make the experience better and more rewarding. And I guess that takes me to you, Henry, because, let's talk food and drink. New York City. I mean, obviously, from my accent, I'm not from here, but I moved here a few years ago, and the waste that you see in this space is something which is quite astonishing. So could you tell us a little bit about what your approach is, and then maybe touch on that idea of why it isn't a compromise to actually go in a more sustainable direction?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thanks for having me. I mean, it's not often that people think about food as a climate-sensitive industry, so it's nice to be able to talk about it. What we're trying to do with our Scope 3 carbon neutral commitment and experimenting with trash-free restaurants, zero-waste restaurants, is just trying to create the idea that as restaurateurs, where food is responsible for 30% of global emissions, we actually do have an obligation and an opportunity to think about that. And also the fact that in terms of individual agency, creating positive climate identity, and consuming, this is something that people do, usually 3 times a day. It's the only form of consumption that's absolutely not voluntary. So just having an option out there for people to, frequent a carbon neutral restaurant, I mean, it's a lot of questions, it's a lot of confusion. It's definitely not why most people come to the restaurant. What is zero waste? Isn't this greenwashing? But having those conversations in, a major media market like New York is an opportunity to try to push restaurants, which is, trillions of dollars of consumption around the country, around the world. And, a lot of the peers are just now recycling, maybe composting. We have a zero waste events company, and most of the venues that we work in just have a huge dumpster. No recycling, no compost. So we have to bring everything back with us. So we have a long way to go with food, but that's why it's exciting.
So thinking about communication specifically, I guess most restaurants wouldn't see themselves primarily as communicators. They're cooking. But you're telling a story through what you're doing. Like, what's your experience in terms of positive, negative reflections from your customers?
Yeah, people talk a lot about and think a lot about restaurants, usually not with sustainability in mind, but I think natural wine is a really good example. There's a whole world of media and personalities and culture around this movement, and rarely do people realize this is one of the most successful regenerative agricultural transitions anywhere in the world of any agricultural product. They're actually recarbonizing the soil. They're not using fertilizer. They're not using pesticides, but very few people talk about it. So we'll try to push that. We'll host events. We'll do things like this to just get people to think a little bit more about it when they go out to eat and see what the restaurant's commitment is, because these are civic spaces. They're third spaces in New York where there is no space. So trying to do it with mission and values and trying to spread it at moments like this or wherever we can is important. I'm going to say the majority of the people that go to our restaurants do not care if we have a climate positive mission, but hopefully that changes over time.
I'm a big believer in they don't have to care. As long as you're doing the right thing, it doesn't matter why you're doing it if it's being done. And so I think, but it's great that it's a great way of communicating to get people involved. But if you're bringing people in, I think that's fantastic and positive. And I look forward to being at the event with you tomorrow. I mean, we're touching on a few different areas here, and I know we're sort of running at time, so sort of we do some shorter, quick Q&A on this. But Zay, coming to you, you've just done one season of the show. You're doing a second season, and you're finding amazing and interesting climate stories, which is, I think, the coolest job in the world.
It is, yeah, dream come true.
What are you looking for a story that you think is going to touch an audience?
So actually, as I'm listening to each of you, I'm thinking you're each visioneers. It really comes down to and actually like you, Adam, my wife was the one that encouraged me to head towards sustainability, because we have platforms. We don't realize it, but we have platforms, and we just have to make the choice to do something that's actually, going to help the future, or we can keep doing something that's going to be the mainstream. And what we're doing is we're changing the narrative so that this is the mainstream. And whoever it was, you were talking about how when you're in a theater, you feel that energy. When you're in a concert, you feel that energy. When we're in this room, we feel that energy, and it becomes cool to do whatever anyone's talking about, right? So we're talking about looking at our own lives and seeing what can we do with our own resources. Like for me, it's the TV. So I'm going to use that platform to just have some fun, but have the subject be about sustainability. And you're doing that with the movies, and you're doing that with the music, and you're doing that with the food. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is raise awareness, put it in the homes so people think about it, so they talk about it, so that it becomes cool. And I think now it is. Look at the turnout this year for the entire city is gridlocked right now because everyone's out here.
Sorry, Unga did some blame for that as well.
But yeah, that's the takeaway from our program, is that we look inward, see what we can do, and then make that change. Be the change you want to see.
And English, I guess, with what you're doing, it's more of a sort of curation role. I can imagine it's a really interesting experience. How do you set upon that journey?
Well, I might have to echo some of my fellow panelists. My initial spark was my husband. Yeah. Sensing a bit.
See, my husband doesn't give a damn about climate change, so
I'm sure he does.
But I think that's part of it, of having somebody in your own personal life, whether it's your partner, your friend, your neighbor, somebody at the coffee shop who strikes up the right conversation at the right time. And that's exactly what happened to me. Is my husband started his own climate journey back 2019, and he comes from more of a tech background. I myself, curation, arts, programming. And so I started to say, hey, I do maybe have some skills and some lived experience that I can add to the climate conversation. Beforehand, I thought, oh, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a journalist, I don't have anything to add. Boy, was I wrong. We all do. Everyone in this room, everyone in the cinema, everybody at the concert, at the restaurant, have those conversations. And that's exactly the kind of narrative shift that we also hope to instill within whatever spaces that we are in.
Thank you. Adam, as a performer, I'm sure you know lots of other performers, it's not uncommon for performers to have causes. What would be your top tips, your guide from how to be someone that actually has an impact and it's not just a sort of a show, to coin a phrase?
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique position to be in as a musician on tour. You can actually walk your talk and it's on display. Hey, this stage is powered by the sun. We're using reusable water bottles on stage, and we allowed the venue to bring in your reusable water bottle, and we're providing free water at concessions. We actually asked concessions to provide a plant-based option at the same price as the meat, and we're encouraging you to use it. We're allowing you to get in and out of the parking lot faster if you're carpooling. We're telling you which ways to get to the venue on public transit. Whatever we can, it's all on display. So it's this wonderful way of inviting people into your own efforts as an artist. You can say, hey, this is what we're trying to do. And of course, you don't just say, we're the greenest tour in the world. That's a silly thing to say. But if we're trying to make things better and we'd love you to join us, it actually enhances. I didn't expect this with my own band and fans, but it actually enhanced our relationship to our fans. I was just trying to elevate the conversation because I didn't want to talk about how I made my hair stand up. Like that was the email I was getting. I was like, I don't want that.
By the way, how do you make your hair stand up?
We can talk later. So that's, I think that's really it, is that the fact that you can actually walk your talk on this issue is really great, because you're actually coming from a very authentic place. And if you're just simply inviting fans in and giving them an easy way to actually have real impact. At the end of a tour, Reverb puts out a tour impact report, and the artist will put that on social media and hold the mirror up to their fans in the community and go, look what we accomplished together. We raised X number of dollars. We got rid of this many single-use plastic water bottles. We brought out this many nonprofit groups, and you all signed up for their campaigns. We did this many volunteer hours. So it's this big positive thing. We actually kept a little guest book in the Eco Village just to see what fans were saying. And we let them know, like, we will show the band this. And overwhelmingly, it's fans just thanking the band for giving them an easy way to participate.
That's really good to hear. And Henry, I'm going to give you the final word on this. And one thing we've not touched on is, we all work in, you can call it culture, environment, creativity, whatever. These are all industries. There are jobs, there are livelihoods, there's an economy here. As an employer, do you think embarking on this journey helps you have a more positive relationship with your staff, whether it be your direct staff or your suppliers? How has this impacted you on that side of things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I have a more positive relationship with myself. It's starting an organization isn't the fastest path to success or the easiest. So you need reasons to get out of bed and work on it and get through the difficult days. And as a founder, as an entrepreneur, to be able to work on something climate adjacent, I think the most important, most exciting problem in the world, in the form of restaurants, which is also fun. I mean, it's a real privilege, and there aren't immediate financial benefits, but there are huge benefits to feeling like you're doing anything to work on this. And I think, hopefully the members of the team feel that as well when it's a hard day. And, the guests are annoying. It's like, well, at least I'm working at a climate positive company, in addition to everything else. I think spiritually the benefits of working on this stuff are really underrated. So.
Well, please give a round of applause to our first panel. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Adam.
I'd now like to invite our second panel to take the stage, where we're going to go in a bit more of a sporty direction. So we're now going to look at a different area of communicating climate change, and we're going to take this from a few different angles. But just one thing I'm sure many of you have seen as well: sport is something which is coming up a huge amount at the moment, and I think it's not just because of the Olympics and the World Cup in the United States, but I think we're all as people trying to find different ways to engage, and sport is something which touches people in a very different way. John, you're from KPMG. I think people in the audience might not initially understand why sport is part of the story for you, but it is, and I want to hear a little bit more, and I want the audience to hear a bit more about that. You've had an absolutely sensational and interesting career. I'd love to know how you might have used the experiences that you got through being an Olympian, and how you're applying that in the very different world which you currently inhabit.
Thank you, Adam. So, the sport that I took part in is a crazy sport, whitewater slalom. I don't know if many of you heard of this, going down rapids and so on, completely crazy. Initially as an athlete, and then subsequently as a coach, including coaching the British team. I've had the honour to work with a number of former and current Olympians. And, one of the key things there that really resonates is that, as a coach, as a lead coach, you work with a team. And the team have really diverse experiences. So typically you've got a strength and conditioning coach. Obviously I do the technical aspects. You've got somebody who's doing sports psychology. Somebody else is you've got a doctor and so on. And what you're doing is you're bringing all of that experience together to challenge and to support each other in driving performance. So driving performance for your athletes, that's fundamentally it, right? And in the context of my role now at KPMG, I have an amazing team. Again, diverse team, but this time I've got...
Probably wearing different clothing though, right?
Slightly different clothing. Not so much, wetsuits and so on, but anyway, not too much rubber, but, the team now is comprised of people who are specialists in climate, nature, biodiversity, human rights, but also some of the traditional things that we do, tax, legal, audit, and so on. And what we're doing is bringing all of that together to help to drive performance, but for businesses, performances which is sustainable over the long term. So what do I mean by that? It means, considering profitability and value, how do you ensure that you protect profits in a world right now that we're seeing the growing impact of extreme weather and other sustainability related issues, but also going back to profit again, how do you grow your profit by leaning into sustainability focused products, services, and ways of working? So it's really taking all of that knowledge, bringing it together and helping companies that we work with. We work with companies over 143 countries around the world to position their businesses to thrive in the future, and a future which is low carbon, just and robust in a robust way. So one of the things that I'm really seeking to lean into is to take the same intensity that we had in sport, into sport, and there's incredible people here, and I'm sure you hear from them in a second, whereby, sometimes it's tough, right? It's tough. You don't get the results that you want to do, but there's no discussion around giving up, right? And I recognize now it's really tough time out there for many of us in this, but we're not going to give in. We're not going to give up, but we're going to continue to press ahead, because fundamentally, when I bring all this together from a performance perspective, what we're seeking to achieve now is so much more important than what we're seeking to achieve in the sporting domain. So that's what I'm trying to do.
With the last panel, we've been talking about communicating with the public through TV, through film, through restaurants and concerts. You're now communicating with a very different audience. You're communicating with senior businesses who have a job to do, and that job is often make money, and you're trying to get them to take the path we're discussing today.
Absolutely.
Any lessons you've learned on that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. What you need to do is first and foremost, you meet those senior leaders where they're at. So if they're focused on reducing costs, that's where you meet them where they're at. If they're focused on growing their top line and their profits, you meet them there. You ensure that, and I talk about this a lot, the importance of being bilingual or trilingual or quadlingual. And what I mean by that, you speak the language of the function that you're at. So if you're speaking to a CEO, you talk about strategy. If you're speaking to a CFO, I'm going to get technical, you talk about EBITDA and profits. If you're speaking to a CIO, you talk about some of the IT related matters. So what you do is you meet them where they're at, and then you help them by threading the needle of driving business performance and sustainability. So specifically, you reduce, most companies, we heard before about the waste, for example, in food business. Most companies in the world, most can reduce waste by between 10 to 12%. And you typically have commensurate savings in cost and also emissions reductions. So you show them that. You show them the things which are both and. You're helping them in terms of where they're at, and you're also achieving, this long-term sustainability vision.
Mike, I'd like to hear your angle on this as well, because you were the NFL for 15 years, I believe. So also a background in sport, but now you're doing something very different as the president of Brightcore. Tell us, are there any similarities with John's story there, and tell us a bit of your own story?
Yeah, I think, John, you said it so well. I had a 15-year career here in New York City as a goaltender for the New York Rangers. And, it was all-encompassing. You're selfish with your time, your focus, everything. And then one day it ends. I had always had an interest in the environment. And I think there's incredible parallels. And there's the great metaphors of teamwork and all of that. But I think when you're talking about communication, and I'm the president of the company, I'm primarily in sales, I'm not a tech guy. You have to talk the language, as you're saying, to meet people where they are, sure. But I think we need to move away from green, sustainable, nobody knows what the hell that means, and use the term better. And I think this parallel, this link from my athletic career, I had somebody, I joined a board when I retired, I went back to school, and you're moving from one world to another, right? We all have done it, it's uncomfortable. And going back to school, I was taking some classes and finishing up my undergraduate degree. And I joined a board for Riverkeeper here in New York, and they said, you're a really surprising environmentalist. And I said, well, why? What does an environmentalist look like? And it's like, well, athlete, and it's kind of we're here. And thinking, who doesn't have a stake in clean water, clean air, cheaper food, affordable energy? Everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're conservative or liberal. It's gotten political, but it's ridiculous. We are humans, and it's the basis of our existence. So I think the link from my world, my old world, to today is health. If you're an Olympian and you have 2 weeks to win that gold medal, and you've worked a lifetime, and you get the sniffles, you get a bad ankle, your health is your fundamental kind of directional ability to perform. And that's true of everybody. If you don't have your health, you're done. And in that 2 weeks in the Olympics, it's over. And we all are the same. If we don't have our health, it doesn't matter what job you have, it doesn't matter how your family is, it's going to compromise your existence. And the link with health and the environment, I don't think we need to explain that. Clean water, clean air, and everything else. That's what performance is about. So back to this green and sustainability thing, I think there is a message there, and that is we are improving, especially this country. It's been built on innovation, risk takers, improvement. You just look across the industry and the tech world and all that we have at our fingertips now. We're standing on the shoulders of others. Elon Musk, say what you want about him, but he changed what people thought about an electric car. I used to have a Prius because it was green. My kids were like, drop me off about a mile from school so no one sees me. It was an ugly car, I got to admit. But anyway, you look at these cars now and they beat a Ferrari off the line. It's all performance. And so you're not just saying, hey, look, this car doesn't have tailpipe emissions. You're saying it goes from 0 to 60 in 1.8 seconds. Your eyes are rolling back in your head. It performs. It's a better mousetrap. So I think that's where we have to move the conversation. And that's what sport's about, and that's what your health is about, and that's what performance is about.
I think looking at how we communicate with different people, sometimes it sounds a little bit like you're sort of trying to trick people into believing something. And of course, it's not that at all. And I think sport is a really interesting way of getting people, helping people through their lives. It has a huge role to play, and which takes me to you, Robbie. Growing up in the UK, football is a really important part of a lot of people's lives. For many people, it is your one chance to get out of where you have grown up and be something you want to be. There are no other opportunities. And you've had an amazing career, one of the top goal scorers at Liverpool, played for England. But you've also worked at, in philanthropy. You've got, your own group supporting young people. Could you just speak a little bit to how you use your position as probably one of the most famous people in the United Kingdom to actually turn that into causes?
Yeah, I think I've got to be honest with you. I think certainly when I was a player, the environment, all that we're talking about climate change was not something that I really thought of. I think it's obviously as you get a little bit older, you understand that your obligations, responsibilities are going to change. And I am here now to get educated, and it's obviously listened to the panel before, and you talk about the, pop stars, you talk about people in TV. Sports stars are massively huge and influence, and everyone out there. Quite simply because there's so many people all over the world who want to get educated as well. They don't really know everything, and I'm the same. I'm learning stuff every single day. I think the power of sport is huge. Everyone can benefit from that. If you were to get like a Travis Kelce, Steph Curry, Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, if they're out there, promoting what the environment or what a climate change can do, then people will listen. And I think that's where I sort of come in for it now. I want to get educated. I want the world to be a better place. I mentioned before I am late to the party, but I've got kids now. You don't really think about that until you do get a little bit older and you start understanding that we do have to look after the planet. We do have to sort of make things a little bit better for the future generations, and I think that's quite simply what I want to do. I've not got the powerful stories I think the guys and the guys before have give you in terms of what they've learned and what they've achieved. I want to do that. I want to achieve things. I want to learn. I want to be better myself, and I want to try and educate others, which obviously falls into the category of what you mentioned me about. I have a college in the UK, and we have obviously 250 kids. Obviously the college system is a little bit different. The educational system is different here. We have a 16 to 19 college, and try to get the kids educated in terms of getting them to universities, getting them scholarships, obviously over in America, and just giving them the education to sort of better themselves. So I think that's my route now, is just education, and you can do education through football or soccer. But certainly from a sporting point of view, we all love sports, or the majority love sports. So I think there's a platform there where we can all benefit.
And tell us, in terms of your journey, when does the stage come when you start thinking, I want to devote more of my time to causes? Is it when you sort of go from the player to manager position? You said, you've got kids, you're thinking about them. For you personally, when did you start thinking, and not just on climate, but in terms of your college, when did you just want to get stuck in?
Yeah, look, I think from an early age in terms of playing football, I think you mentioned before about getting into a sport was maybe one way of getting away from, certain areas or whatever. I was that. I'm from obviously a rough area in Liverpool. And I'm not saying I wanted to play football just to get out of that. I think I have, so much respect for the area where I was from. My family still lived there. But there's that platform that I was saying that if I knew I wanted to do something, and I think I am testament, and not everyone can be as lucky as what I am. But if you certainly want to go out there and want to better yourself, then you give everything you can in terms of what I did in terms of wanting to play football. I give it everything. From a young age, I knew I wanted to be a professional footballer, and I knew I was going to be a professional footballer before I left school. I left school at 16, and I sort of let my education suffer because I knew I was going to be a professional. Now, whatever level professional I was going to be, I didn't know. But then that was up to me to try and determine how I wanted to be. I worked hard at my game, and I suppose anything in life is, testament to, if you work hard at it, you can get better. I did that. Became a footballer. Went on to have a tremendous career in terms of soccer. And then when you get a little bit older, then you start to understand, well, you can't play football forever, you can't play soccer forever. So then you've got to change your mentality about, what you can do after that. So for me, quite simply, I have had obviously businesses, I've obviously got a college, as I've said, but for me, it's going down the coaching route as well, where I can still learn and still better, because, I still feel as though I've got a lot to give. I still feel as though I've got a lot to learn. Because obviously in the footballing world, to be a head coach or to be a, top manager, you've got to do all your coaching badges. So to get a C license to a pro license, you're looking at 8 years. And then, you get that. And to show people that you're still willing to learn and develop, there's other, courses you can do. I've just completed a diploma in football management as well. And again, that's just to educate myself. And that's just to show people that I'm willing to go out of my comfort zone and show people what I can do to try and better myself.
And I think, we've seen today from a lot of the conversations and a lot of the speakers, it goes beyond as well. It's so complex. So like with Liverpool Football Club, there is the messaging, there is the stuff that you're doing. But you've also got things like the stadium and how people travel there. And Rishi, your director of impact at Liverpool. Take us out from the story that Robbie's just told us into some of the more practical ways that this is that you're focusing on change.
Of course. So at Liverpool Football Club, we have the Red Way. So the Red Way is our overarching sustainability program. As with most sustainability programs, 3 pillars. People, planet, communities. Again, very similar language, but I suppose with everything to do with Liverpool, we want to make it red, because why wouldn't we? But from a people pillar, that's where we really take on our responsibilities around leadership, accountability, responsibility. Like, it's not a coincidence that LFC was the first club to take part in a UK Pride March. It's not a coincidence that LFC was the first UK sports team to take the knee. Like that's what we do, and that's almost what is expected of us as a football club, both from our supporters, but also from our colleagues and also from our former players and stakeholders. That is what Liverpool is all about. From a planet side of things, it's hopefully everything you'd expect to see. It's 2030 commitments, 2040 net zero. It's water, waste, biodiversity, circularity, it's food. But that's exactly the space we should be in. That sort of comfortable uncomfortableness is what I referred to in an early conversation. And then our communities pillars, where for me, the real excitement starts, or continues, I should say, not starts. And then you've got a hybrid. You've got the work of the incredible LFC Foundation, the club's official charity. They've got targets to work with 500,000 young people every season by 2030. And that target is for the most underserved communities in our city region. So it's not easy. It's incredibly hard, but that's something we're really proud of. And then for us, it's about the brand and the value that we have. So that's also where we team up with our commercial partners. We've got around sort of 26 to 28 commercial partners, and my job is to align our commercial partners to the Red Way. So as a sustainability program, we're really proud to be leading in a football sense and hopefully in a sporting sense and on a global scale, but we recognize that holistic approach is where success comes from. As I said earlier, like, our fans expect us to be the first to talk out on certain topics, and with that, you can see that 2 ways. You can either see it as a burden or you can see it as an opportunity. And I have the privilege of being able to work with colleagues across the club at all levels to very much see that as an opportunity. And sometimes that is hard and sometimes that is tough, but when you do put yourself out as a leader and you do say, we want to be the best, we want to win the Premier League and the Champions League every single season. By the way, we are Premier League champions. By the way, I thought I need to get that in here. But we want to lead on and off the pitch. And actually players like Robbie, who's an integral part of our history, they have that tenacity to do that on the pitch, and I suppose it's my job and the work of our colleagues off the pitch to make sure that we mirror that in terms of what we do, and that is essentially what the Red Way and the football club is all about.
I want to use the word competition because I think with people who have been involved in sport, competition is so positive. And sometimes in this space, we've got a lot of different people from companies, non-profits, and competition is an interesting word to use when we're trying to tackle climate change. I wondered, John, you deal with lots of different organizations. what role do you think competition can have a positive, negative impact? What role does competition play in us being more aggressive in finding these solutions?
Look, it's definite positive impact as far as I'm concerned, that you never settle in, and when I go back to my times competing in sport or coaching, that you get the massive highs of maybe you go to the Olympics or whatever, you achieve whatever result, it's brilliant, and you settle, and then you're like, right, next. And then on to the next cycle. And I think what we need to do is to embrace that spirit, embrace the word I used before is that intensity, because if I go a little bit into the science, we all know that we're off track for 1.5 degrees. What I would say, though, the positive message is that Paris, had we not have the Paris Agreement, by the way, we would be on track for between 5 and 6 degrees. So we've already missed the worst of that. So we do need to have that context there. So if we're off track for 1.5 degrees, depending on how you then add up the various different contributions from around the world, you could have a view on, at best, maybe low 2s, mid 2s, up to 3 or early 3. Okay, so that delta between where we are now and the 1.5 degrees, I call this the innovation gap. And this is where we need to lean into that and drive the new solutions. And I think competition, friendly competition towards that goal is something which is really, really going to spur us on. And I already see loads of really incredible applications of AI. Yes, there are some downside and considerations in terms of energy use and so on, but we're already seeing applications whereby AI can optimize the energy that you use. It can integrate, grids in terms of fossil fuels and renewable energies. It can do many, many things to reduce, buildings like this, the energy use. We've seen between 60 and 70% on some of our of energy reduction. So competition is great as long as we're focused on the right thing. And I know we are, and this panel before, focused on, powering ahead, powering on, should I say, to low carbon economy. And I think if we do that together, we can really close that innovation gap.
Mike, I feel in I'm obviously from the UK. I moved here a few years ago. I think when it comes to sport competition, things get taken up a notch here. I think, although Robbie may disagree when I come to you next, I'm pretty sure you're competitive in Liverpool as well. But I'd love to know your experience at the NFL, just about in terms of that human spirit that's needed to be a top athlete and maintain that level for years. You're now an entrepreneur in this space. Like, what's the sort of hidden source that helps you with both those jobs?
I think the best way of looking at it is, look, we all want to beat our competition. Everybody loves to win, but are you going to be doing what's necessary to win? And that's a different question. We all like winning, but you lose more than you win mostly, even great players. And so you have to be motivated to keep improving. Like, your goal has to be as best that you can possibly be, which sounds trite, but I think when you get done innovating and being motivated to improve yourself, you're done playing. And we as a society, if we're saying this is as good as we can do, we got a big problem. Because the people before us didn't say that, and we're living the luxury that we can because of them. What are we doing? And that's where I get back to this optimization and this idea of not green, but better. Where's the better cars? Where's the better homes? We sell lighting, controls, solar for commercial industrial buildings. Boring, commodity stuff, but we got into geothermal, which is really interesting. We're selling it because, hey man, if you put it in this building, you're going to save money. That's kind of our pitch. One of our own employees got it. He's a big guy. He used to play American football, heavy set fella. His wife's always cold. He's always hot. Just had a new baby. He came in and said, "You guys are idiots." I go, "What?" He said, "You don't even talk about how good the experience is. I can tune my room in. I never hear anything. It's quiet as a mouse. Yeah, I'm saving money, but it's a better experience. This is a better system. It's not a green system." And we have to continue to improve ourselves as a company, as a player when we play, and as society. And that, I think, is a competition that's going to get us to where we need to be.
Robbie, what's your advice? How have you must be a very competitive person. How have you applied it for the best?
I mean, look, I can't disagree with anything that you say, and I think certainly to be a sportsman, you've mentioned obviously motivation. To be that, I think it's in life. I think you obviously need everything to get sort of motivated. To be a sportsman, you're talking, your attitude, your desire, and the big one that I always mention is sacrifice. You sacrifice a lot to be, top sportsman, and what I'm taking on from what we've spoke about on this panel now is, I think it's just be better. And I think we can all sort of go away. We can all learn a bit more. I certainly want to do that. And I've enjoyed being up here, listening to obviously listening to the guys before, because I know going away from here now, I'm going to do a bit more. I'm not going to be this big entrepreneur and fix everything, but if I can help in any way whatsoever, then I'm all for that.
You heard it here first. Client Week NYC 2026 opening ceremony. Robbie will be here. Rishi, I'm going to go to you finally. Similar question, but slightly different framing. Competition. There's a lot of stadiums out there. There's a lot of clubs. We all want to be doing the same thing. How do you, and not just within football, but obviously other sports as well. So, what the final point from you? What does competition mean for you in this game?
Essentially, and I touched on it earlier. Competition does drive us to be better. Like essentially, my most senior leaders are saying to me, go and be the best, which is a great remit to have, challenging at times, but this club is doing this, why aren't we doing this, Rishi? And you have to react to that, but actually that does drive us to be better. I think the big thing for me in my role is, yes, go and lead, being part of conversations like today, New York Climate Weeks, COPs, etc., but make sure, and this is particularly important in my role, is make sure there's substance underneath what we do. I can't go out and say, look how great Liverpool Football Club is, we want to lead on and off the pitch, if I'm not doing the day-to-day at home. And that's really where our success comes from. Like, for example, I get what I always say, the easy part of the job. I get to talk about it and pick up the awards and the recognition. Everyone's like, Rishi, been at another awards? So I'm like, yeah, that's brilliant. But actually, there's genuinely about over a third of our business have sustainability or an element of sustainability in their day-to-day role. And that is what makes us successful. So when we talk about competition, our competition is to genuinely win the Premier League, win the Champions League, win every trophy we possibly can, but also lead the way and ultimately make the world a better place.
Brilliant, thank you. And just a final word for me, and remind the purpose of this event is it's meant to be a sort of taster menu. We're touching on a number of different things, and sometimes it might not make complete sense on how they all fit together. But that's sort of the point of Client Week NYC in a way. And this has been fascinating. The first panel's been fascinating. Want to remind you, this might be the last session of the Hub Live, but there's sort of 5 more days of Client Week NYC to come. And I've learned a lot about different sectors that I've not been involved in. I think we've all learned a bit more. And I just want to sort of remind you and ask of you, go onto the website and look at those events, and maybe find an event that you have no interest, no idea, it has nothing to do with you. Fashion, me? No, or sport or food, whatever it is. Challenge yourself to go to an event that absolutely is not for you and try out and see. And I hope this session, 8 amazing speakers, has just given you a bit of a taste on actually how amazing that can be to learn something you're not used to. So with that, I want to thank this panel, the first panel, all of you for being here. Enjoy the rest of the week, and thank you for being at the Hub Live.